Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. How did the Holy Roman Empire form? I don't know. Let's find out. Let's learn. Hey guys, my name's Connor. If you're new, hope everyone's doing well. Original link to the video top of the description. Armchair Historian, great channel. Let's go.
Of relative stability. 8th century Europe. After decades of relative stability, a new threat has appeared on the horizon. The Umayyad Caliphate, a Muslim dynasty whose territory stretches from Morocco to Central Asia. The Umayyad armies pour across the Straits of Gibraltar and easily wrestle control of the Iberian Peninsula from the Visigoths, leaving the Muslim Empire poised to conquer all of Europe. But ready to resist are the Franks, distant...
What's that French guy who fought at that final battle that pushed the Muslims back into Iberia? I feel like it's one of either his first or last name starts with a P. I forget.
Cousins to the Visigoths who but ready to resist are the Franks, distant cousins to the Visigoths who had taken the former Gallic regions of the Roman Empire. In 732, Frankish forces under the command of Charles Martel prepared to meet the Umayyads at the...
I was wrong. It wasn't an L or a P. Charles Martel. That's what I was trying to think of.
Forces under the command of Charles Martel prepared to meet the Umayyads at the Battle of Tours. The Franks hoped to deliver a stunning defeat to the invaders, blocking an Umayyad conquest of Europe and opening the continent for Frankish rule. Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian. The fall of the Western Roman Empire was one of the most influential events in European history. Innumerable kings, princes, and minor states rushed to fill the power vacuum left in the empire's rubble. By the 8th century AD, Europe was mostly controlled by the various Gothic kingdoms who had dealt Rome its death blow. Remarkably adaptable, the Goths settled into their new lands as nobles and administrators, even taking up their own brand of Christianity, Arianism. Today, we will be discussing how these Germanic kings would go on to form the Holy Roman Empire, and how those who had once torn down the Roman Colossus would become their successors.
Guys, is the Arian Christianity in 1930s Germany, you know, Arian are they at all connected, or are they completely different? Like, and I mean at all connected. No? Yes, no?
Before we begin our deep dive into medieval politics, I'd like to highlight our sponsor for this video, Mindstone, an innovative new tool designed to...
I'm trying to say, did the Germans take the idea of Arianism from that? Or is that not the case? This is a ad from Armchair Historian. It is 3 years ago, so I'm not sure if it's still in, but we're going to watch.
You learn and process information as quickly and efficiently as possible. When confronted with a subject as complicated as history, especially medieval history, it's vital to maintain focus on the important details. Fortunately, Mindstone helps you do exactly that with features such as notes, annotations, and commentary directly linked to your reference material. You can also highlight sections of text, then enter the highlight view to review them across multiple articles, giving you an instant summary of all of the information gathered so far. Mindstone is ideal for group study projects and community endeavors, with features designed to help a team coordinate their efforts and make the best out of their time together. Furthermore, if you sign up for Mindstone before June 30th, you'll become a free founding user for life. During research for this video, my team was able to collect a large amount of information on the Carolingian Empire that was extremely useful for both the scriptwriting and art departments. To gain access to this shared library on Mindstone for yourself, all you have to do is click the link in the notes section and you'll be sent right there. Charles Martel's dramatic and unlikely victory at Tours dashed all hopes the Umayyads had of moving beyond Iberia. It also marked the beginning of the Carolingian dynasty, with Martel's son Pepin the...
Charles Martel was not king of the Franks, but the mayor of the palace, a title that held all the real political power. Pepin was also mayor at first, but eventually deposed the figurehead King Childeric III with papal support, merging the two positions for good.
short, becoming
Jeez, I could not read that well.
the beginning of the Carolingian dynasty, with Martel's son Pepin the Short becoming the king of the Franks in 751. Despite his diminutive moniker, Pepin was a wise ruler who cultivated a strong relationship with the church, greatly expanding the power and influence of the papacy.
So when they got into power, it seems like not many of them changed their name. That seems a little insulting. Was it not insulting back then? Was it just kind of a... It was just like, yeah, you're short, Pepin the Short. It's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Am I using like modern thought that it doesn't apply?
Greatly expanding wise ruler who cultivated a strong relationship with the church, greatly expanding the power and influence of the papacy by granting Pope Stephen II control over a number of Italian cities that Pepin had conquered from the Lombards. Thus were born the Papal States. However, it would not be until the reign of Pepin's own sons, Charlemagne and Carloman, that the possibility of building a true empire to rival Rome presented itself. Despite splitting the kingdom equally between Charlemagne and Carloman in accordance with the Frankish inheritance law, the two brothers began plotting against each other. With lawsuits not having been invented yet, the two brothers prepared for the next best thing: civil war.
That's an interesting idea. When was the first lawsuit?
But conflict was averted when Carloman died in glory, armor covered in the gore of an acute nosebleed. With his only true rival dead, the energetic and capable Charlemagne was now king of all Francia, and the...
Died of a nosebleed? That must have been one hell of a nosebleed. Or maybe he was already low on blood or something.
Reunited kingdom soon became the most powerful nation in Europe. It was a power that would soon be tested.
Imagine if that was still... Imagine if the same borders, you know, north of the Papal States. Imagine if this was one country today. It'd be so freaking powerful.
Powerful nation in Europe. It was a power that would soon be tested. In 795, the consecration of Pope Leo III sent shockwaves through the Catholic world. Leo was a commoner with no political allies or influence, and the election of a low-class pontiff was unheard of. The nobility within the new pope's flock quickly sought to gently persuade Leo to abdicate, and he was forced to flee Rome in 799 after nearly having his eyes and tongue torn out by hired thugs.
Oh.
Thanks to his family...
I don't know what would be worse. Part of me thinks the tongue would be more painful. Ugh. I'd rather have eyes than a tongue, but I feel like the process of getting rid of those, oh god, never mind.
With the church, Charlemagne was the logical person to turn to for help, and Leo was soon back in Rome under heavy Carolingian guard. But with his enemies accusing him of crimes ranging from adultery to perjury, Pope Leo was left with little choice but to swear an oath of purgation, stating his innocence before God on pain of eternal damnation. Unable to challenge this declaration without calling their own religious integrity into question, Leo's enemies were forced to admit defeat, and most were promptly exiled. With his power unquestionably restored, Pope Leo presided over Holy Mass in Old St. Peter's Basilica, and as a reward for his service, Leo christened Charlemagne Imperator Romanorum.
Hold on. If people really believed in the afterlife of heaven and hell, like if they truly believed that, then what would be the point of inflicting any pain or torture on them before that? If you know they're about to get the worst torture ever for eternity, then it doesn't really make sense, if you really believe that, to do anything. And if you thought, like, well, what if he doesn't go to hell, then I gotta torture him now. Well, then if he doesn't go to hell, then wouldn't that mean that your God would want them to be in heaven and therefore you're going against him? It's a weird thing. I'm just like, do you really believe it? Or are you just saying that as like a means of power or something?
For his service, Leo christened Charlemagne Imperator Romanorum, Emperor of the Romans, before the dumbfounded faithful.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
Defeat, and most were promptly exiled. With his
guys, I'm sorry. Just go ahead.
On pain of eternal damnation. Unable to challenge this declaration without calling their own religious integrity into question, Leo's enemies were forced to admit defeat, and most were promptly exiled. With his power unquestionably restored, Pope Leo presided over Holy Mass in Old St. Peter's Basilica, and as a reward for his service, Leo christened Charlemagne Imperator Romanorum, Emperor of the Romans, before the dumbfounded faithful. To say this was a controversial move would be an understatement. For one thing, the mantle of Imperator Romanorum was already taken by Empress Irene in Constantinople. Despite having lost control of Italy, the Roman Empire had preserved thanks to its prosperous eastern territories, and its inhabitants viewed themselves as being part of the exact same national and political entity that had existed since the founding of Rome itself.
Okay, but you don't have Rome anymore. It's like, I'm not saying that you don't have the same culture of Rome and you are the true surviving power of Rome over the West. It's true. But your namesake is a city that you don't even control. You know?
The papacy had even endorsed this viewpoint, having maintained for centuries that the person sitting on the throne in Constantinople, Empress Irene at this point, was the legitimate ruler of all former Roman holdings in Europe. With a single declaration, Pope Leo III had unpended political and religious conventions which had been in place for over 400 years. Why was Leo so ready to flout tradition? The relationship between the Church and the Roman Empire had been initially one of mutual benefit. The Pope endorsed the legitimacy of each new emperor.
Christianity was no less divided during this time period than it is today, with the Church in Rome representing a set of traditions and beliefs that had slowly drifted apart away from those practiced by the Church in Constantinople. Okay.
Of mutual benefit. The Pope endorsed the legitimacy of each new emperor in exchange for their assurance that the empire would come to their aid in any time of need. But over the years, the papacy had come to regard the title of emperor as ultimately originating from God, designated specifically by the Pope, and returned to him upon the death of each emperor. Finally, it was unthinkable for a patriarchal organization like the Church.
It seems like a way of like not directly saying like, hey, I'm still in power over you, but instead of saying that, saying, well, God is still in, decides what, you know, who rules for you, and since I'm, you know, the representation, or I forget what the Pope exactly is, of God or whatnot, then I need to say that to you. It just seems like a lot of this stuff is just human nature disguised in some religious way, and it seems very disingenuous. Of just like using religion to hide the more disagreeable things that you want to pursue because of your own human nature.
Finally, it was unthinkable for a patriarchal organization like the Church to be seen as declaring a woman as emperor, so Empress Irene remained unrecognized despite her holding the title Leo had just given away. Due to the belief that the imperial title could only be granted by the Church, Charlemagne was barred from declaring a new imperial dynasty, and his intense piety prevented him from questioning this state of affairs. Furthermore, Frankish succession laws meant that the vast territories he had amassed were inevitably split into separate nations by his heirs. Within just a few generations, mighty Francia had reverted into squabbling petty kingdoms, and the imperial title was reduced to little more than a bribe dispensed by the Pope to ensure the loyalty of Italian nobles. When Berniger I of Italy was assassinated in 924, the title was rendered all but defunct. However, the coronation of Otto I as King of East Francia in 962 AD would resurrect the title Imperator Romanorum in stunning fashion. By this point in history, East Francia's culture and politics were distinct from its western neighbor, causing many to refer to it as the Kingdom of Germany. The early days of Otto's reign were marked by endemic political intrigue. The impractical Frankish inheritance laws responsible for tearing the Carolingian Empire apart had long since been discarded in favor of an elective monarchy. Practical Frankish inheritance laws responsible for tearing the Carolingian Empire apart had long since been discarded in favor of an elective monarchy, with the electoral vote being carried out by the most powerful dukes of the realm. But Otto's father, King Henry, disregarded tradition by naming his son heir apparent without consulting the electors, leading to much resentment. The situation came to a head in 937 when civil war broke out between Otto and his nobles, who
War began when Otto refused to give land to his older illegitimate half-brother Thankmar, who was able to rally support from the disgruntled German nobility to start a full-scale insurrection.
Promptly sought aid from West France. Civil war broke out between Otto and his nobles, who promptly sought aid from West Francia. In the bloody series of conflicts that followed, Otto distinguished himself by crushing the rebellion and re-establishing control over Germany. Having consolidated power, Otto now began seeking to expand it further, beginning with the subjugation of the Kingdom of Italy, a key part of the old Carolingian Empire. In a bid to consolidate his grip on the peninsula, Otto allowed the defeated Berniger II to style himself King of Italy in exchange.
You know, I don't really see German history like I see French history or British or English history, and that I see as French and English, I view it, probably wrongly, but I can't help it. I view it as more of a continuation of what was always like French and always French culture and always English culture. But Germany and maybe Italian too, but Italian history at least can even look back to like Roman times, I guess. But when it comes to Germany, I forget just how far back their history really goes. And because I think of like the beginning of Germany as, you know, the Franco-Prussian War. But clearly the Germans and Germany is a much older concept that has had just as long of a history as the other two.
Exchange for Berniger's defeated Berniger II to style himself King of Italy in exchange for Berniger's fealty, but he was resentful of his suzerain, and when Otto became distracted by affairs back in Germany, the King of Italy launched a revolt. Crucially, Berniger's forces besieged the city of Rome, causing Pope John XII to petition Otto for aid. Seeing a chance to demonstrate his ring-kissing, Otto raced south with an army and quickly forced Berniger to retreat. Upon entering Rome, Otto met with the Pope and swore a solemn oath to defend the Church against all adversaries. Having secured a powerful and influential protector once more, the Pope was more than happy to dust off the imperial title and declare Otto Emperor of the Romans. Byzantines be damned. Unfortunately for John XII, Otto was no Charlemagne.
I don't want to beat a dead horse there. But again, it's like, you know, you're saying like, no, God, it's divine authority that decides the emperor or whatever, and it goes through me. But it's like, just so as you're getting threatened, now, okay, this is a good emperor. And I guess you could kind of do some mental gymnastics and be like, well, us being threatened is a threat to God and Christianity, and so you can rationalize it. But it's funny how what seemed to me like just very human nature things for humans, you know, is balancing justice and reason with self-preservation. I think that's a constant battle with all humans, right? Is every human doesn't want to be seen as just no roots in truth and reality, but also you need to preserve yourself. And so I feel like religion might be a really good mechanism to bridge those two things. Is you can still come across as being just and also get a lot of what you want. I could be beating a dead horse here, though. Little Griff. Otto had little respect for the authority of the church and regularly appointed his own bishops to German churches, eventually establishing the imperial church system. While this shored up Otto's control of the kingdom, it irritated the papacy. Sure.
Unfortunately for John XII, Otto was no Charlemagne. He was contemptuous of Pope John's alleged depravity and worldliness, and chastised the Pope for his lack of piety. Incensed at this ridicule from a mere earthly ruler, the pontiff began plotting against Otto from the moment he left.
So is he essentially accusing the Pope of like, you're just a normal guy and using your power for your like earthly urges and needs, and you're not even like, you're supposed to be this grand, not like other humans, just in all purpose of God, and you just seem like this regular person with power. And that's kind of what I got there.
Let
me know if I'm wrong.
Ruler, the pontiff began plotting against Otto from the moment he left Rome. But the new emperor was no fool and discovered the papal plan within a year. For his treachery, John XII was ignominiously deposed, and a new pope was elected in his place. This set an important precedent, demonstrating that any sufficiently powerful emperor could easily defy the papacy and get away with it. Otto secured imperial power by having his son, Otto II, crowned his co-emperor by Pope John XIII in 967. This skillful political maneuvering cemented the creation of a new imperial dynasty, which would reign until 1024. Although Otto's actions secured a lasting claim to the title of Roman Emperor, his Roman Empire was not yet holy. His behavior also created a lasting animosity between the new emperors and the papacy, with both claiming to be the main inheritors of the Church's divine mandate and the legacy of ancient Rome. Additionally, Otto's autocratic rulership alienated his nobility, and as the power of his dynasty slowly waned, they were able to take back control of the elective monarchy and extract numerous concessions from the new emperors. This complicated relationship casted a shadow over the rule of Frederick Barbarossa I, the man who would finally make the German lands a so-called Holy Roman Empire. Barbarossa was elected Emperor of the Romans and King of Germany in 1152, but with little intrinsic power, Frederick had to politic his way through the courts of Germany to accomplish anything of substance. However, Frederick's boundless ambition drove him onward, and he began planning to wrestle control back from his quarrelsome nobles and restore the glory of the imperial throne. His opportunity came just 1 year later, in 1153, when Pope Eugene III appealed to him for aid. This was a dark time.
This was a time of significant hardship for the Catholic Church.
For the papacy.
In general, with heretical sects such as the French Cathars becoming active during this time, these factors would eventually lead to the formal establishment of the medieval Inquisition. Well, a heretical sect to you is what you are considered to them, and so it's just someone trying to wrestle back like the truth of Christianity or whatnot.
With the abject failure, appealed to him for aid. This was a dark time for the papacy, with the abject failure of the Second Crusade having weakened their political sway in Italy to such an extent that the citizens of Rome had ejected the Pope from the city and were calling for the Church to renounce all of its worldly possessions. Not one to let a good crisis go to waste, Frederick signed the First Treaty of Constance with Pope Eugene, promising to restore the Pope's position in Rome in exchange for a grand and public coronation as emperor. This last point was critical, as up until now, Frederick was merely an emperor-elect and had yet to be crowned in a holy ceremony. His attempts to enforce the treaty faced innumerable setbacks. Before the year ended, Pope Eugene was dead, with Pope Adrian IV replacing him and nominally upholding the agreement.
This is like it's the church and the papacy. The church itself is such a powerful tool. In that, if you don't have that, right, then how do you assure everyone that you're trying to everyone in territory that you're trying to control that like you are legitimate and like you have reason to be there? Well, having a public coronation, be like, oh, this is why. And just, I can see that as a giant asset, something that you wouldn't want to just stamp out.
After a year-long campaign in the south of Italy, Frederick arrived in Rome in 1155, only to refuse to follow the ritual displays of subjugation to His Holiness demanded by tradition. The deeply offended Adrian refused to move forward with the coronation until he had been sufficiently honored. Frederick eventually gave in, but is quoted as muttering, "Pro Petro non Adriano," for St. Peter, not Adrian. The hasty coronation that followed was punctuated by yet another revolt, forcing Frederick to spend his first few hours as emperor re-establishing control over the streets of Rome. He was then informed that his kingdom was in disarray after his year-long absence, forcing him to retreat from Italy and leave Pope Adrian to broker a humiliating peace with his amused opponents.
Instant communication, I bring this up all the time, is such a crazy concept that makes so many things unnecessary. Or, you know, it's so hard to put myself into a time where no one on earth can communicate with other people on earth instantly. You need to, and not only not instantly, like, you need to travel there. That has such crazy implications, and I think it might be one of, if not the biggest change ever in history, just how society operates. I could be wrong there, but
ironically, this embarrassing affair would be the basis upon which Frederick established the true Holy Roman Empire. Bombarded with a series of angry letters from the Pope that could easily have been interpreted as threats to revoke his new title, Frederick made the fateful decision to sever all imperial ties with the Church for good. In 1157, he declared his nation a holy empire and granted himself full power to appoint or dismiss members of the clergy within his domain. Finally, the embittered Frederick decreed that the title of Roman Emperor was now intrinsically holy, that the leaders elected to the throne were holy Roman emperors, ruling with the backing of God. From this point onwards, no future emperor would ever seek to gain or consider the validity of their title based on papal endorsement. Thus was finally founded the Holy Roman Empire. Its foundations were not built upon glorious wars of conquest or even great acts of personal valor. Instead, they were constructed upon a centuries-old legacy of frustration, mistrust, and bitter arguments between church and state. After centuries of petty rivalries, civil wars, and papal politics, the Holy Roman Empire was finally born, at least in concept. Despite standing until 1806, the HRE was more a set of kingdoms unified under a loose set of ideological principles than a homogeneous political entity backed by an absolutist state. The citizens of the HRE were also largely Germanic, with no claim to Roman ancestry, and the Protestant Reformation shattered any religious unity within the empire, forever dispelling any hopes of it being seen as holy in the eyes of God. But this very lack of centralized identity allowed the HRE to endure centuries of internal upheaval and external conflict.
It's a great video. When he says, I said most of what I said already, but, and I know I'm kind of beating a dead horse with like how religion is used. Okay. I'm sure you're like, all right, I get it. But like when you're saying a struggle between church and state, it's just a struggle between people with different modes of power. And I think it's useful to really just generalize things, because I think you can get lost. It's like, it's people who just want power. No one is better or worse than the other person, and they have two different means of doing it. Let me know if you disagree with this or if I'm just talking too much about this. Love y'all. Would appreciate any comments down below, any answers to any questions I had, and hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. Bye, guys.